For LNG in BC, it's crunch time. The LNG Alliance says the time is now. Decide to move forward and build and then start selling natural gas in 2023 or 24, which is projected to be the next market window. LNG Canada recently appointed a joint venture engineering firm as the prime contractor for the Kitimat site the company has cleared and is preparing for the building of a $40 billion facility. The company, however, is yet to make its final investment decision. All signs suggest that will happen in late 2018. Now, unlike Kinder Morgan, the government of British Columbia is firmly behind the project and appears to be going out of its way to accommodate the development of liquefied natural gas in BC. Looming in the background is Green Party leader Andrew Weaver, who is as opposed to LNG as he is to the movement of oil. And what about First Nations? Are they in support of the project? The First Nations LNG Alliance is an organization that represents 15 communities along the Trans-Canada pipeline route, and they support the pipeline and the LNG facilities. We asked Haisla Nation Chief Councillor Crystal Smith to join us for a conversation that matters about the risks and the benefits of supporting LNG Canada and other proponents in the development of an energy-based project.
Conversations That Matter is a partner program for the Centre for Dialogue at Simon Fraser University. The production of this program is made possible thanks to the support of the following and viewers like you.
You are advocating for the development of the LNG sector here in the Skeena, in your nation, the Haisla Nation. And yet it comes with challenges. There are those who say you're doing it for your own selfish or social reasons, but you're not thinking about the greater good of all. How do you respond to that when you look at life here in Haisla Nation and you can see what the upside is of bringing economic opportunity, and then to hear something like that, how does that affect you and how do you respond?
I've had the fortune to be able to listen to our previous elected leaders and sit at the council table for the last 8 to 10 years. I've heard our hereditary system's vision in terms of sharing our wealth that we're so fortunate to have here at the end of the Douglas Channel. So a saying was that share our wealth with our neighbors. When I think of a nation that's trying to heal ourselves from the generational effects of residential schools, I can't help it but think about other First Nations that we can potentially help and bridge those gaps where we're so fortunate to have and live at the end of the Douglas Channel with this amazing port that's bringing all these opportunities to us. I want to reach out. We've set our direction in a Haisla perspective that we want to build a healthy, prosperous, powerful nation, and that means independent members. That means healing from our trauma in individual families and as a community. When I see that beginning to take shape, I think about the other First Nations communities that are sharing the same common issues. And I've been, in the last 2 to 3 months, I've been getting that message out that Haisla is willing to partner. Haisla is willing to speak about the common issues that we all share as First Nations people. And to be able to link our synergies so that we can all accomplish a common goal. In a personal aspect, I lived that firsthand. I've lived that trauma firsthand. About 5 years ago, my common-law committed suicide. I lost the love of my life.
Right.
And my daughters lost their father. And I'm not saying that it's the money that would have saved him. But if we had programming that could provide education and awareness of mental health and addictions, we might have had him longer with us. So that's my inspiration, and He gives me strength and a desire to assist. I'm sorry. Cool.
Don't apologize, because this has had a powerful impact on you. And it's devastating to lose somebody like that, especially when you look at life and think, if only things had been a little different, maybe there might have been a sense of hope, and that it's not there, and it doesn't appear to even be on the horizon, makes people give up, and it's really unfortunate. So you want to, from what I understand from what we're talking about, is you're saying, I want to make sure that future generations, current generations and future generations, don't lose hope.
They don't lose hope, and they don't have to go through what my family's had to go through, our communities had to go through. It's absolutely devastating when you see and live the realities of the First Nations community and what we go through.
Can you describe what that is? Because so many people do not understand what it means to live in a First Nations community, and what are those challenges that rob you of the feeling of a better day ahead?
It's limited programming. Right now, if and I don't want to say a typical First Nation, but an average First Nations community in the province only receives funding from the federal and provincial government that's quite restricted around policies, and there's no changing the policies of how you use that funding and what it's allocated for. When I first became a part of the council as their assistant, our post-secondary education funds were restricted, which then restricted the dreams and aspirations of our members. If only certain programming were funded by post-secondary.
And was that prescribed to you, or were you able to choose the kind of programming or education?
It's all prescribed. All the funding that a First Nations government receives is all prescribed. They're utilized for specific programs and access to certain services. So we couldn't access the funding for trades, for instance.
Like for skills development?
For skills development. We cannot use that portion of money for that.
So I've got to get you to hang on for a second while we take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back. Sorry for the interruption, but I need your help. I'm asking you to support the show by becoming a patron. That means pledging $1 per show. Conversations is a unique program. There's no grandstanding, no arguing, no yelling. Instead, I sit down with people who have unique insights, specialized knowledge, and experiences that inform and enlighten. And we do this on an incredibly limited budget with a very small crew. Well, this is my office, and it's where I edit the show. And then once it's ready, we give it away. You know, so many different websites around the world are carrying the show, but they get it for free. They don't pay us. So I'm asking you to pledge $1 per show by going to patreon.com/conversations that matter. Thanks. We want to keep producing conversations, and with your help, we can. Now let's get back to the show. You can't use that money then to also create economic or entrepreneurial ventures that might create jobs.
Very limited scope. Right off the top of my head, I can't think exactly what the dollar amount is that has been funded. I believe recently it has been increased, but it's not enough to be able to provide that type of opportunity, any type of opportunity for a First Nations community.
So then what does the promise of LNG help to bring to this environment?
I can't even put into words the type of hope and the grand scope of exactly what that means. Every time I think about the programming that we could potentially offer and the type of employment and capacity that we can that we can offer, I get goosebumps.
Is that exciting?
It's that tremendous. It's that huge for our people.
So how does it transform things then? When you have that money that would be coming as a, an agreement between you and the different proponents, how does that then start to change life in the community, and then your ability as a council to be able to develop those programs and encourage economic development?
Our community is already feeling the effects of their presence in our community.
Just while they're in the decision process?
Just while they're in the decision process. So what I spoke about, the specific department for post-secondary funding, we are now able to fund that skill, the trades. We're able to fund, one example is a yoga instructor, whereas before it would have been denied completely, and we're able to fund any desire that our members have for further education. We're able to do that.
Mm-hmm. So in the years since the Northern Gateway Pipeline project was ended, and while you're in negotiation with the different proponents around LNG, how has the relationship with proponents changed? Because I know that Northern Gateway presented a wide variety of challenges, especially for Haisla. Ellis Ross pointed out that he had some very serious issues with that. What has changed in the nature of the relationship now between the Haisla Nation and proponents?
I think it's a acknowledgement in a form of a respect for First Nations in a territory in which you're operating in. Specifically, LNG Canada has definitely set the bar so high in terms of that proponent interaction. The relationship hasn't been easy, and I don't think any relationship is. But the desire and the willingness for that to build that mutual respect and that common goal of what you want to achieve, I think is the true meaning of that reconciliation process in play. And I think our relationship with LNG Canada is one that is definitely one that needs to be displayed in terms of how well we work together, how well they listen and they hear the concerns, and they respect the fact that we are the specialists when it comes to our own territory and what it means for us to be Haisla living at the end of this Douglas Channel.
How long does it take to come to an agreement like this? Because as you pointed out, it's complex. So there must be so many issues that you have to work your way through. So it's not a quick decision process.
No, it's not. So I can estimate, and every proponent's different. And every project description is different. Not one area in our territory is the same, so there's different balances in different areas that we have to work through. So I'm going to say it about 3 to 5 years approximately to work through the challenges of coming to an agreement. And I don't think it stops at the agreement. We have definitely been fortunate enough to be able to evolve into what Haisla is today, meaning our elected leadership and our administration. It's an ongoing agreement. It's a living document. Once that agreement's done, what comes after, I think, is the most important key aspect in any type of economic development, and those are fulfilling the obligations. And in my opinion, that's when the work begins.
So just because most people have no idea how Band Council goes through its decision-making process, I'm sure that there is an awful lot of discussion within Council that is, yes, well, okay, under these circumstances and so on. How does that process unfold when you're trying to work your way through that complex set of negotiations with somebody like LNG Canada? So
we are definitely fortunate enough to have that capacity within our administrative team. We have built a tremendous team that essentially looks after the economic development in general for major project development within our territory. Without our administration and the teams and negotiation teams, the decision making, it goes from their level. They work everything out, and then it comes to a committee of the council that oversees the major project development, which is the chair is Kevin Stewart, and then it will come to the council table. So we rely heavily in terms of our technical team and our advice from our administration, who have done tremendous amount of work to get us to where we are today.
In the midst of all of this, you then meet with Andrew Weaver. What was the point or the objective of that meeting?
The point and the objective of our meeting was to let him know that we have done our due diligence. We've been working with LNG proponents since 2007, and on this file longer than that. We've done our due diligence. We are looking after our territory and what it offers. Environmental concerns aren't at the back of our mind, they are the forefront. We tend not to focus on and speak about the environmental impacts because as a First Nations, it's always important. These projects will go away in approximately 40, 50 years, depending on what happens in the future. And one thing's for sure is that we won't go anywhere. Mm-hmm. We will always be here. So when we say that we're addressing our concerns about in regards to environmental impacts, who better to do that than the people that will never leave, and that's Haisla.
I did a fascinating interview a couple of years ago with a woman by the name of Mafalda Arias, and she is a cultural integration specialist. And she said one of the things about communication between cultures is to understand the meaning of words. And so she used the example of caring about the environment. She said, so government says environment is important to us. Corporations say environment is important to us. First Nations say environment is important to us. She said, but the thing that you have to understand is that you're not all saying the same thing. And what she pointed out is, she said, in white culture, corporate culture, we're stewards of the environment. Whereas within First Nations communities, we are one with the environment. We don't put ourselves above the environment. We are all the environment. And as a result, the perspective is, of course, we're going to protect what in essence is our brother and sister. And I thought, my, oh my, what a beautiful way of looking at that. And as I listen to you right now, I think that's what you're telling me.
Yes, as you're being brought up, there's what we refer to as our Nuyum. It's a book of Haisla philosophy and beliefs, and that's what we're raised by. We're raised to not take and be greedy in a sense. We're raised to take only from the earth of what you need and what your family requires at the time. So it's a way of life for us.
Mm-hmm. So, did Mr. Weaver hear you?
I didn't change any minds in regards to the LNG file. No, I didn't.
You're being polite at the moment.
I am. Was
that disappointing for you?
In a way, I had that expectation. I anticipated that specific meeting all day, so it was in the afternoon, and we went to Victoria to meet a wide range of ministers to talk about Haisla, and his was in the afternoon. And I felt anxious, I felt excited going into that meeting, knowing that we had, and the work that we complete has so much meaning and so much inspiration and intent behind it, that the work that we're doing, I don't believe is wrong. Mm-hmm. We've done everything that we possibly can in terms of getting these projects, and we've had that experience. We've had the taste of what economic development means and what it can do for our people. That when I'm in company with somebody that has a different opinion, it provides inspiration for me.
Yeah, it must also provide frustration as well.
It provided a lot of inspiration. I can't, and I'm not going to change in a realistic point of view. In the position that I am in, I'm not going to change too many minds. I'm not going to change too many perspectives.
When you take a look at what's happening around the protests associated with the Kinder Morgan pipeline, are you worried that you may face some of that here as well?
No.
No?
No.
You believe that the message will be heard that you have done your due diligence?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely confident in LNG Canada's and in all the LNG proponents to be able to fulfill their project in a safe manner.
I know that it would be devastating to come so close to seeing this economic opportunity that, as you pointed out, will have environmental benefits and it benefits not only in your community but in other neighboring nations. It would be devastating to have that slip away after having done so much work.
I think the key factor in comparison for the projects, I believe, is it all boils down to the product. They're two completely different products, and I think we've done a very amazing job in terms of our communication to our members. And LNG Canada and the proponents have done their due diligence in terms of dispelling the two and differentiating the two products. So I'm going on that manner, and if required, we'll provide more communication, more education processes around that piece to avoid that.
Well, I wish you great success because I want to see all people in Canada have access to opportunity, and I can only begin to imagine what the long-term benefits would be. About 4 years ago, I did an interview with a young First Nations male in Kelowna, and he had gone through a training program that gave him industrial skills and changed his life. And I asked him if he would suggest that somebody else take this program, and he said, absolutely. And I said, well, what's the number one thing that you get out of it? And he said, self-confidence. And I said, why is that important? And he said, because self-confidence is like wildfire. Once you have it, you have no idea where it's going to take you. And I thought, wow, what an extraordinary gift to be able to give somebody. Opportunity, training, self-confidence, and then who knows what the future holds.
Most definitely. Opportunities are endless, and that's what, that feeling is what I desire for our generation now, today, and future generations.
Thank you very much for doing this. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.